All right, I think we're live. If you can hear me in the chat, just push 1. We'll get started. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 534, Black Geopolitics. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. There's a doc in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in this discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. There is a new Zoom update that just came out, 5.0.2. Make sure you update your Zoom client before you join the panel. All right, let me pull up the first item on the docket and then we'll get started. What's going on here? All right, let me get started with the first item on the docket from the New York Post. FBI mistakenly reveals Saudi diplomat suspected of aiding 9/11 terrorists. FBI lawyers accidentally revealed the identity of Saudi diplomat who agents have suspected helped deliver crucial support to the Al-Qaeda terrorists who carried out the September 11th, 2001 attacks, according to a report. The disclosure came in the court documents filed in April that were unsealed late last week in a lawsuit brought by families of 9/11 victims accusing the Saudi government of aiding the attacks. Yahoo News reported. The Saudi official, Musaid Ahmad al-Jarrah, had his name blocked out in all but one appearance in the document, with the FBI admitting to Yahoo it was a mistake. Jarrah was a Saudi foreign ministry official assigned to the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. in 1999 and 2000. The strength of the evidence against al-Jarrah is not known, though some investigators believe he instructed others to help the terrorists settle down in the United States after they flew into Los Angeles in 2000, Yahoo reported. The federal government's official stance is based on the 2004 report on findings from the 9/11 Commission, which stated it found no evidence that the Saudi government as an institution or senior Saudi officials individually funded the organization. The report found Saudi Arabia to be a primary funding source for Al Qaeda, with the extremist organization raking in funds from wealthy individuals and corrupt charities. But it couldn't draw a connection to the Saudi government. Saudi officials have also steadfastly denied aiding in the attacks. But a spokesman for the plaintiffs in the suit believes the screw up is a major revelation. This shows there is a complete government cover up of the Saudi involvement. Brett Eagleson, a spokesman for the 9/11 families, told Yahoo. It demonstrates there was a hierarchy of command that's coming from the Saudi embassy to the Ministry of Islamic Affairs to the hijackers. This is somewhat damaging to everybody who's involved. Okay. Okay, so you have redacted names on documents. Okay, fine. But what's happening here is that if he operated out of the embassy and help these people settle down, like the document says he did, what this means, you have foreign agents in your country that have been operating from a nation state perspective, and yet we throw out the Russians, but we keep the Saudis. You got to make it make sense. Okay, the Saudis buy a lot of weapons from the United States. So what? Who is really concerned about weapons being sold to the Saudis from a capital from an industrialization standpoint? If the families are like, I know these guys got something to do with it, let's do the investigation. Okay, this is a big deal. For all this time, we went into Iraq, we went into Afghanistan, looking for people that didn't even exist. All these memorials, all of this, never forget. What was the point of all of that? Flags, running around at half staff. I don't know. This doesn't make a whole lot of diplomatic sense, so to speak, at least on behalf of the United States. I mean, you ban the Saudis, but so what? Who's getting arrested for this? The hijackers are all dead anyways. So somebody has to be held accountable. But do you really think you're going to get reparations from Riyadh? I don't think so. Yeah, all those dead troops. What the hell did they fight for? What was the point? Nothing good came from the invasion in 2003. Nothing. Nothing good came from that. Nothing good came from Afghanistan. Okay. A lot of wounded soldiers and wounded warriors, missing limbs, hidden injuries. All for what? Nothing was accomplished. Nothing good came out of it. Going into Syria, taking down Lebanon, taking down Sudan, breaking it apart. Nothing good came out of all of this. Banning Muslims, harassing Muslims, religious bigotry. Nothing good came out of any of this. Even with all this documentation, it really makes me mad. Let me move on to the next article. All right, we're gonna get to tonight's focus, anyways. This is from the New York Times. Intelligence chief declassifies list of Obama era names in unusual step. The nation's intelligence chief has declassified an Obama-era document related to President Trump's former National Security Advisor, Michael T. Flynn, according to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, in a highly unusual move that prompted accusation that he was trying to discredit the Justice Department's Trump-Russia investigation. Richard Grenell, the acting director of national intelligence, declassified the document. A list of Obama administration officials who sought to learn the identities of Trump associates swept up in the surveillance of foreign officials and gave it to the Justice Department, officials said. The department does not intend to release it, a senior department official said. And Mr. Grenell's office declined to provide a copy. This is spelled wrong. But Republican lawmakers could demand that Mr. Grenell's office release the list. Mr. Grenell's move came as Mr. Trump and his associates have in recent days intensified their efforts to change public perception about the Russian inquiry from a scandal involving Mr. Trump to one involving his predecessor. They argue that the Obama White House, the FBI, and the news media acted improperly as they sought to learn more about Mr. Flynn's ties to Moscow. It is part of the struggle over who controls the narrative of the investigation of the 2016 election, said Stephen Aftergood, an expert on government classification at the Federation of American Scientists. It is putting the spotlight on the investigators rather than the investigated. It is saying what is irregular here is not the extraordinary contacts with the Russian government, but the attempt to understand them. The information that Mr. Grenell declassified could help a Justice Department prosecutor appointed by Attorney General William P. Barr to investigate the origins of the Russian inquiry. The prosecutor, John H. Durham, has examined the initial leak of information to a Washington Post columnist about phone calls in late 2016 between Mr. Flynn and the Russian ambassador to the United States. Officials have said Mr. Durham could use the names of Grenell's list to identify officials who would have had access to the sensitive details about those discussions. The declassification could also allow Trump administration officials to leak the names on the list without violating laws against disclosing classified information, the very issue that Mr. Durham is investigating. Mr. Flynn later pleaded guilty to lying to investigators about the conversations in a case that the Justice Department abruptly moved to drop last week, prompting accusations of politicization from former law enforcement officials. The drop case ignited an intensified phase of the attacks by Mr. Trump and his allies on the Russia investigation. Mr. Trump has begun on Twitter to label his counter-argument Obamagate and prompted news articles about Mr. Grenell's declassification. On December 29, 2016, routine American surveillance of Sergei Kislyak, then the Russian ambassador to the United States, picked up multiple conversations with Mr. Flynn. At one point, Mr. Flynn asked Russia to refrain from retaliating against the Obama administration's sanctions imposed on punishment for Moscow's election interference. Representative Devin Nunes, Republican of California and a member of the House Intelligence Committee who has championed Mr. Flynn's cause, has long said that Obama officials acted improperly in requesting the associates of Mr. Trump be revealed to them from surveillance transcripts. Mr. Trump has accused Susan E. Rice, Mr. Obama's national security advisor, of committing a crime by seeking to learn the identities of Trump associates caught in intelligence surveillance. Mr. Trump has never provided any evidence to support his claim. Name of Americans swept up in wiretaps of foreign officials by spy agencies are blacked out of transcripts to prevent such eavesdropping from becoming a tool for improper domestic surveillance. But experts said that Mrs. Rice's request to see or unmask them were a justifiable step. Officials must provide a reason to view the information, like trying to better understand the significance of the electronic intercept or the strategy of a potentially adversarial government, Mr. Aftergood said. But declassifying or publicly revealing which officials make those requests is highly unusual, he added. Ms. Rice has said she does not remember specifics of her request, according to transcripts of questioning by congressional investigators released last week. But she said she was trying to understand Russia's election interference and would have been concerned about an official outside government, as Mr. Flynn was at the time talking to foreign adversaries in a way that could have undermined the sitting administration's policy. Republicans have renewed their focus on Ms. Rice in recent days. On Fox News on Monday evening, Trey Gowdy, the Republican former congressman, pointed to a partially declassified memo from Ms. Rice, which said Mr. Obama raised concerns about sharing information about Russia with the incoming administration. Mr. Gowdy called on the rest of the memo to be declassified and released. Okay, so here you have it. All this talk before, okay, all this talk before about Russia this, Russia that. We know those Russians, they were interfering with the election. Okay, there's a lot of black people in the black community, in black social media saying it was those damn Russians. Okay, there's a lot of that going on. And now we see that was never the case. Okay. That was never the case. Where are all those people now? Okay. I was on Black Gnostic Speak back in 2017 saying this. I'm on record. Okay. I talked about this in 2017. This did not happen. They had no evidence. How can they claim that? Okay. Not that I was a Trump supporter, not that I was against Obama, not that I was for the Republicans, not that I was against the Democrats. Where's the evidence? When I asked for the evidence, no one could provide it. They just said, this person said this person said that. Now it's starting to come out. This was all a hoax. Oh, the Russians, they may interfere in our election. How? How would they do that? You go to the voting booth, you show your ID, your voter ID, or whatever it is, and you vote. That's how that works. How can the Russians interfere with the election? No one has been able to really come in and really specify what this was. Okay? No one was able to specify this. Everybody kept saying, well, I think they did interfere in this election. But how? How? You got to explain, how did the Russians allegedly interfere in the election? The FBI, DIA, CIA, intelligence agencies are saying, no, we don't have any evidence. We don't know what you're talking about. Mike Flynn, he was set up. By who? The very people telling you that the Russians interfered with the elections. He talked to Russians. He talked to this person, talked to that person. There was a flight stewardess from Aeroflot Airlines where she was Russian. He ordered a cocktail. He spoke to her. She was Russian. He must be guilty. That's what they said. Where are all these people in the manosphere claiming that, we can't trust the Russians? Putin is the devil. Putin's a bad guy. Putin's Russia. Right? Trump was supported by the Russians. That was the narrative. People still have their live streams up. Don't take your live streams down. Don't take down your live streams now that this information is coming out. Keep your live streams up. Don't hide them. Don't delete them. Because when we talked about this back in 2017 in the manosphere, people were saying Russians this, Russians that. It was Trump is connected. Connected to who? What are you talking about? Putin paid him off. He's Putin's lapdog. Really? Where are all these people at now? Where are these people now? Mike Flynn was set up. Everybody kept saying, hey, that guy, Michael Nance, former CIA guy, former CIA analyst, he confirms that the Russians and were interfering in the elections, and Mike Flynn was talking to the Russians. Now it comes out, it was never the case. Where you at though? All right, this is from PBS. Newly released Russian probe transcripts from the House Intelligence Committee. House Intelligence Committee on Thursday released 57 transcripts of closed-door interviews conducted in the course of its probe into Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, in a letter to Acting Director of National Intelligence Richard Grenell, blamed the excessive delay in the ODNI's classification review of the transcripts. White House intelligence unanimously voted to release in November 2018 on improper political inference by the White House. According to the letter, the ODNI completed the requested review earlier this week. In a statement after making the transcripts public, Schiff said that they show precisely what Special Counsel Robert Mueller also revealed, that the Trump campaign and Donald Trump himself invited illicit Russian help, made full use of that help, and then lied and obstructed the investigations in order to cover up the misconduct. The Intelligence Committee concluded its investigation in 2018 with a report by the then Republican majority led by Devin Nunes, Republican of California, finding that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russians seeking to interfere in the election. Okay. You got a lot of people in the manosphere running around talking about it was those damn Russians. Can't trust Putin. The Soviet Union is making a comeback. We gotta be on the lookout for that. Where they at now, though? Okay, keep going through this. Please hit the like button if you're not going to partake in the chat, please. A lot of people watching from the clouds. All right, this is from the WashingtonTimes.com. Obama officials, no empirical evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, transcripts reveal. The Obama administration officials told the White House, told House Intelligence Committee they had no empirical evidence the Trump campaign conspired with Russia ahead of the 2016 election. Transcripts released Thursday revealed. I never saw any direct empirical evidence that the Trump campaign or someone in it was plotting, conspiring with the Russians to meddle with the election. Former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper told the committee in 2017. Okay, Clapper is saying this. That's not to say that there weren't concerns about the evidence we were seeing. Anecdotal evidence, but I do not recall any instance where I had direct evidence, he continued. The bombshell revelation was laid bare in the transcript of Mr. Clapper's closed-door interview as part of the Intelligence Committee's probe into Russia's 2016 presidential election interference. Mr. Clapper wasn't the only Obama official who acknowledged there was no hard evidence of ties between Russia and the Trump campaign. Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice said there was no smoking gun. To the best of my recollection, there wasn't anything smoking, but there was some things that gave me pause, she said. According to the transcript, I don't recall intelligence that I would consider evidence that I saw conspiracy prior to my departure. Susan Rice, okay, Obama's security advisor. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. That's what's going on here. So you have Brennan. I mean, not Brennan. You have Comey, Clapper. You have Susan Rice. Who else? Okay. Who else? All this talk about Russia this and Russia that. Kind of like the Brady Bunch. Russia, 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 right? Marsha, 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 Russia, Russia, Russia. Where were all these people at before? And we threw the Russians out. Remember, we kicked them out. They were interfering in our elections. Ridiculous. Right? Get out of my embassies, right? The embassies that they had on the West Coast and they had on the East Coast, they had to vacate those embassies. Pack all your stuff up and get out. You interfered in our elections, you son of a bitch. Get out of our country. And we're putting sanctions on you too. Right? That's what they were told. They were told that. So where are all these people now who are on the left saying, yeah, Putin is a bad guy. They were doing this and they were doing that. Where are they at now? Okay. This one's from the Washington Times. New transcripts reveal Loretta Lynch uninformed as FBI targeted Trump's campaign. New release documents show FBI agents operated on autopilot in 2016 and 2017 while targeting President Trump and his campaign with little or no Justice Department guidance for such a monumentous investigation. Loretta E. Lynch, President Obama's Attorney General, said she never knew the FBI was placing wiretaps on a Trump campaign volunteer or using the dossier claims of former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele to put the entire Trump world under suspicion. Mr. Steele was handled by Fusion GPS and paid with funds from the Democratic Party and the Hillary Clinton campaign. This is important. We have to keep up with this part. Okay. I'm not going to go through this transcript right here. But it's important that people understand who Christopher Steele is in respect to this whole entire thing, because Christopher Steele, Hillary Clinton, all this is going to come round robin. There was a lot of people involved in this smear campaign. All right. A lot of people were involved in this. We'll move on to the next item on the docket and see if we can pull up some more stuff from here. No empirical evidence, they say. All right, this is from Politico.com. Brennan, intelligence community vindicated by Senate committee's report. Former CIA Director John Brennan on Wednesday held up a new intelligence report from a GOP-led panel as vindication that there was no hoax behind findings that there was Russian influence in the 2016 election in an effort to help Donald Trump. Brennan, who helped author the intelligence that led to Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian efforts to influence the 2016 election, told Politico that the Senate panel's finding undercut Trump's repeated assertions that the investigation was influenced by anything other than fact finding. I'm just very glad that the Senate Intelligence Committee yesterday came out with a report that totally validated the Intelligence Committee's community's assessment about Russian interference in the election in 2016 to help Donald Trump. Brennan said in an interview Wednesday, Donald Trump continues to call all these things hoaxes. They are not. The only hoax is his representation of the facts. That's the hoax. It's because I think he has this quite understandable insecurity about what he's done. Well, this is what others have done. Trump has repeatedly sought to undermine the intelligence community's investigation into the 2016 election and is reportedly obsessed with Brennan, a vocal critic of the president. But the bipartisan panel on Tuesday, chaired by North Carolina Republican Richard Burr, reaffirmed its support for a January 2017 intelligence assessment, which found that Russia's goal were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Hillary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We further assess Putin and the Russian government develop a clear preference for President-elect Trump. We have high confidence in these judgments. Okay. So this has become personal with Brennan, but now we see that's not the case. All right, let's move on to the next item on the docket. This one is from Just the News. Declassified transcripts. CrowdStrike couldn't say for sure Russians stole DNC emails. Remember CrowdStrike? Declassified documents released by House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff showed the president of CrowdStrike Services, a computer and network security firm hired to investigate the hacking of Democratic National Committee servers, couldn't say for certain that Russians downloaded Democratic Party emails. During the interview made public Thursday, Sean Henry explained that CrowdStrike found some evidence that information was taken from DNC servers, but it was not conclusive. Responding to the question from Joaquin Castro, he said, there is evidence of exfiltration, not conclusive, but indicators of exfiltration off the DNC. Talking about the server. Henry said that based on the evidence his firm reviewed, they believe 70 gigabytes of data were exfiltrated from the DNC's network. However, when asked by Representative Mike Conway whether he could unequivocally say it was or not was exfiltrated of the DNC, from what you know of, Henry responded, I can't say based on that, according to the 80-page transcript. The closed door interview is one of the 57 that the committee conducted during its 2-year Russia investigation. There is widespread agreement in the intelligence community that Russia hacked the DNC servers, but questions have long persisted because FBI investigators did not seize the DNC servers and relied instead on CrowdStrike's analysis of what occurred during the hacking. Henry is a former FBI agent who oversaw the Bureau of Cyber Crimes efforts before he transitioned to the private sector to do cybersecurity work. He was interviewed on December 5th, 2017 on Capitol Hill by 5 members of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Reps Castro, Conway, Adam Schiff, Chris Stewart, and Eric Sowell, with lawyers for the related parties present. Henry said he was initially contacted by a former Justice Department colleague named Michael Sussman, who became an attorney for the Washington, D.C. law firm Perkins Coie. He said Sussman unexpectedly emailed him and subsequently told him in a series of communication that he was seeking some cybersecurity remediation for the Democratic National Committee, whose computers had been hacked. Henry said he realized the magnitude of the account, considering the hack had occurred perhaps by Russian actors during the closely contested 2016 presidential race. This isn't Joe's Pizza, he told committee members. He also said there were 2 hacks, the second having occurred after the first was addressed. Yeah, right. Okay. There were 2 hacks. You're a cybersecurity forensics firm. Your only job is to find out who did it. And you couldn't even do that. You couldn't confirm that the Russians did it. I was having this conversation in the Manosphere back in 2017. I said, where's the evidence of this? John McCain.
Mike.
Yes, sir.
I've argued with my liberal friends on this Russiagate conspiracy for so long. And one thing I've always told them or asked them is that, did the FBI investigate the DNC servers or was it an outside firm? They always think it's an FBI. The FBI actually investigated the servers, but it was actually just a third party that the Democratic Party used. So we really, the whole basis of the Russiagate investigation was never there.
Yeah, absolutely. The FBI were denied access to the servers, and the DNC, on their own accord, gave it to CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike sat on it and did nothing. We can't find out who did it. Really. Your whole job as a firm is to do forensics, and you're telling me that you couldn't find any forensics to the claims that the Russians did it? As a matter of fact, they blamed none other than Chelsea Manning and WikiLeaks. Okay, that's who they blamed. So why is Chelsea Manning in jail and why is Julian Assange in jail? What's the point of that? Why not release Julian Assange out of jail? Julian Assange was sitting in the embassy, in the Ecuadorian embassy, the whole entire time. If they wanted to interview him, they could have easily have flew over there to the UK and questioned him over there. That's not in the transcripts. Okay. Why is Chelsea Manning in jail? Why is Chelsea being tortured in jail, for that matter? If you're saying that you don't have any evidence that they did it and you accused Chelsea Manning of being assisted by Julian Assange and the WikiLeaks news agency, or at least information dissemination agency, of storing the emails that were leaked onto servers of WikiLeaks. This is in accusing Julian Assange of receiving money through Bitcoin to carry out this act. This is very dangerous stuff, man. This is very dangerous.
Yeah, it is very dangerous. I mean, like, they really had a section of the American people believing that their president was a Russian asset.
Yeah.
It's just so laughable, but at the same time, it's kind of it just shows their power.
Mhm.
It really shows their power.
Yeah. They said Trump was Putin's lapdog. Trump was a Russian agent. He worked for the Russians. You had a Russian in the White House, and that the R doesn't stand for Republican, it stands for Russia. Now it comes out, no such evidence to conclude. I don't know. Sean Henry, who is he really? He was an FBI agent, okay? Special agent within the FBI forensics cybersecurity wing, who just so happens to have went to the private sector and created a firm called CrowdStrike, cybersecurity firm, who then does the investigation for the DNC. This has never happened in history, and to my knowledge, that a political party relies on a third party to do the work that typically is done by threat investigation, which is the FBI. That's their role within DHS.
There is one exception. If there's massive corruption within that entity, then they would elect to use a third party. So it's very clear that there's some very high level corruption at the DNC.
Yep.
Very, very high level corruption.
Well, we know Roland Martin, who was a figure within the DNC, worked with a other person within the DNC, Donna Brazil, to hand questions off at CNN.
It's still amazing though
Mm-hmm.
that niggas really thought that this nigga was part of the Russian intelligence service. He was bought by the Russians. A
Right.
U.S. president vetted, who's definitely vetted by the Central Intelligence Agency. Vetted. Like the CIA will probably not allow such a corrupt human being to go into that place of office without being thoroughly vetted. So it's going to be interesting how the Democrats rebound from this, because Trump is definitely on the offense in terms of legal challenges coming forward.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know. Where is the server for that matter? Is it in CrowdStrike's possession? Is it in the DNC's possession? Why don't we get it to the FBI? CrowdStrike couldn't figure it out. Let's give it to the top guns in the nation that's supposed to be able to do this. Where was it at? Where was NSA? NSA's collecting all of this data.
This data, it's like the first people I would go to would be the NSA, because it was 70 gigabytes, right? 70 gigabytes is a lot of data within the network. So there's definitely traces of that data the NSA probably picked up on.
Right.
So
Right.
it was such a fraud from the beginning. It's kind of hilarious.
Right. Right. You have this guy, Sean Henry. I mean, he lied. He lied. All of them lied. And they got away with it. If you make one mistake on your W-2s, the IRS may press charges against you. That's the consequences in this country. Oh, you jumped to the last item on the docket. This is from the intelligence.house.gov Russian investigation. This is all the transcripts. Okay, it's just I put that in the docket just in case anybody wants to question our validity here and say, well, I still think they did it. We don't have any official evidence that they didn't do it. Well, the transcripts say otherwise. Okay, no one is capitulating to this idea that they did do it. And if they did, how did they do it? Because if we're just saying, well, they bought Facebook ads and they bought YouTube ads and Twitter ads, well, that's okay. Let's use that then. Does the DNC not buy ads themselves? What about these consultancy firms and whatnot involved in hashtags? They buy up a lot of ad space too. Are they not interfering in the elections? When you hear a commercial from a presidential candidate, I'm such and such and I approve this message, isn't that interfering in the election too? Well, they're from the inside and then the Russians from the outside. That's BS. That's BS. How do you create a real democracy if you have US presidents essentially interfering in their own elections? Let's talk about voter suppression. Black people, and especially Black men in particular, are victims of voter suppression. Are we going to start calling people up to for investigation for that? I don't see too much of that going on. Okay. I don't see too much of that going on. And what about Russia now? Russia has been vilified as the bad guys. Putin is a bad guy. The Russian Federation, a bunch of bad guys. Let's throw them out of the embassies in the United States. Let's get them out of here. Okay. Are they going to get any of their property back? Those bulletproof BMWs that they had and Audis that they had at their embassies? That stuff got repossessed by the federal government. They paid for all this type of stuff, and then now they have nothing. The Brooklyn Nets, the franchise owner had to sell the team off and bring his money back to Russia. He took a serious loss on it. Okay. Does Putin get an apology? Is anybody going to text him? Are they going to tweet him? Are they going to say, "Hey, we're sorry for for the inconvenience, but we were wrong"? Is this going to open up relations now? Is Trump going to say, "Hey, post 2020, and I'm the guy. I'm going to build better relations with Moscow"? Okay, he was pushing for that in the beginning. Now that's not the case after they've already accused him of being something that he wasn't, a stooge. He was never a stooge. Now it's time to come out. And the same people calling him a stooge are now, sipping cocktails and martinis with masks on their face, acting like this never happened. Okay.
In a way, it's like a tragedy that kind of happened because like so much time, energy was lost, especially political capital.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like the Democrats could have like focused on more issues. They could have focused on more social policy issues. Like maybe not probably keeping some parts of the ACA intact, but like they just chose the most. I don't know. I just don't know the strategy that they were trying to employ.
Yeah, definitely. Because I would definitely say that Black people have been victims of voter suppression or interference of election interference.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely in this country. People standing
They could
at.
have focused on.
Go ahead.
They could have focused on voter suppression and stuff, especially with the Republicans gerrymandering. Like, actually, this is one point that I've learned so far is that, like, the Republicans themselves, when it comes to politics, they're gangsters. They gerrymander. They do some corruption here and there to get the vote. Like, they'll do anything to win. But people think that the Democrats aren't the same way. It's just that if the issue is in their terms, if the issue for the Democrats is worthy for them, they're willing to pull out all the stops to make sure that policy matter gets taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
But like the thing is, they could have just most of my Democratic friends they just could never envision the Democrats would go as far as to fabricate things just to maintain political power. They thought they were the holy saints. They thought that they stood for the people, but in reality, is these guys they're in it for themselves. They're in it for themselves alone.
Right. I would say that the Democratic Party has been instrumental in suppressing black male or interfering into the campaign process and political process for black men. Flooding the communities with drugs and guns and getting people arrested and convictions on their records, and now they can't vote. That's a form of political interference. The disenfranchisement of black men in politics has been astronomical. You can't find a black politician that speaks highly or on behalf of the best interests of the black community at this point.
They always say the brown community.
Oh yeah,
the minority community.
Those people will sell you up the river if they could.
They could. I mean, it's crazy because like black people really in this country don't have any form of representation whatsoever in terms of any negotiation at the table of government, especially when it comes to the federal level.
Mm-hmm.
So
your mic
I just oh my God.
Yeah, your mic is breaking up a lot.
I just don't know. Let me sound back on.
Mm-hmm. New Jersey Prophet says it's foreign governments though, and they don't want foreign governments interfering with the elections. Well, why do you have Israel inside the United States? What's AIPAC for? That's AIPAC's entire existence and their role within the United States is to interfere in the political process of American politics. If we're going to get rid of the Russians, we got to get rid of the French, we got to get rid of the British, we got to get rid of the Israelis. Okay. All this talk about, foreign agents and all this and that. You got politicians who fly to Israel all the time. Why are they in Israel so much? Touching the wall and walking around with little hats on their heads. What is that all about? Istiwas asked a question. Mike Smart, dumb question. Should our focus be on the local level? How important is the presidency towards the black diaspora? The problem I see, and the old saying goes, all politics are local. That was true pre-Soviet, pre-Cold War collapse, okay? Pre-1991. Today, you need a national agenda. You can't have a localized agenda anymore. That's not enough, okay? You need something stronger. You need something that's going to be more effective. putting people on the school board and things like that, that's fine and all, but you can teach your kids at home now remotely. Okay. So if we just want to, educate our kids and things like that, that can be done with technology. But a national agenda, you need a national political institution like an African American Union. And you need to leverage that to your whole entire advantage. See, the Congressional Black Caucus needs to be replaced because it's a puppet for the DNC or the Democratic Party. So you need an institution that looks out or speaks to the best interests of Black people, especially Black men. An African American Union would do exactly that. Not only can you integrate cryptocurrencies into the whole entire process, you can raise money through crowdsourcing, as well as set up diplomats across the continent in the Caribbean. Okay, from a business standpoint, you can operate it just like a corporation, and you can make it a what do you call it? A political affairs committee, just like APAC is. I know some people say, well, we have Black political affairs committees. Where's the evidence of their effectiveness? I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. So I think, to answer your question, Istawa, I think that we need a African American Union. I think we need a political body and an institution that represents the best interest politically and does business abroad as well. Okay. I think there's a lot of opportunity that can come from something like that. And then we can vote our own people within the institution itself, and we can carry our own domestic and foreign policies. You can put pressure on governments. We got data. You extract the data, you extrapolate it, and you put it in the face of the politicians within those areas and say, you guys are not doing your job because we have this many failing schools and this many failing Black males and this many, disproportionate healthcare issues within these areas. Okay. Things can be done. It can be done. We have D. Raptor on the panel. Shalom.
Shalom, Mike. Shalom to everybody in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
This is a curious, for me, this is, man, I don't know what to say about this, because in America, it's not only Black people, but it's Americans in general. And when I say Americans, I'm talking about like Americans, Caucasian, white people, we call them white people here, who were born here. Even even Black people who came from other countries, most of them are very illiterate. And so as the white people in America, they kind of look at the system to protect their privilege. So they really don't care about what goes on as long as they keep their privilege.
Right.
And the Black people don't have any privilege, but the people who are speaking for them are not chosen by them, and they don't protect their interests. You see, you just mentioned one people who protect their interests. They have connections in Israel, they have connections in Britain, they have connections in France, in Russia, China. All over the world, these people have connections. The Israeli people have connections. The Indian people, they have connections. wherever Indians are, they can call up Indians and say, hey, look, we got this little plan that we got to run in America, and we want you to get the, say, Brazilian government or the British government or the Chinese government or Singaporean government, Malaysian government to speak up, and bring this to the forefront. But they're Indians and they're American. They're living in America, American citizens. What they do is their voice. They know the political system. The other thing is their voice, the money. The other thing is their voice, the workforce. Black people don't have that. Black people in America, whether you be ADOS or wherever you come from, the leadership been beaten into the ground. And this Me Too movement didn't go after, they went after the black man first. It's only now that they're going after the Caucasian. It's not the black women that going after the Caucasian, it's the white women that going after the Caucasian.
And they use a black woman to go after black men.
Exactly. So the black women are running the political system, and they think that as long as they do what they're told to do, they're going to survive. They don't care about the rest of the people they don't care about anybody.
Because they have political capital.
Right. And in this world, not even now, but prior to this, you had Malcolm X, who was making connections all over the planet. You have his fellow brother, who is still here now. He made connections all over the planet. And that's one of the reasons why the Israelis didn't like him, because he had those connections. And a lot of those connections, the people he killed, the Israelis just killed him off. Anyway, you need that political capital where you can call up somebody in South Africa and say, look, we're here fighting for this problem. Can your president, he's meeting with Obama or he's meeting with the Queen, can he bring this up? We don't have that. We do not have that. And we will never have that as long as we got the current leadership in power.
The thing
these
is,
people, these people have, we don't put, say for instance, basketball players and the guys who rap and the guys who have music companies, you can see them on a yacht that they spend $100,000 a week to sit back on. The $100,000 a week, these guys are not putting into a political thing to say, look, we're going to support you, but you got to do this. You understand? And they don't wait till you become president. They do it before. They groom you. Say, look, hey, you sound like a man who wants to be president. You got some real good ideas. Why don't you? We will give you some money. We'll back you for president. We'll back you for governor. We'll back you for congressman. You see, and when they gotta get a guy who is going to be the ambassador to Ghana, they go to the president and say, hey, look, this guy is a good guy. He's got the credentials. Make him ambassador to Ghana. So when these same people need something done, they can go to that ambassador and say, look, why don't you talk to the Ghanese president and say, you go, we got this problem here in America. And the president in Ghana can come and talk to our president. And he said, by the way, our brothers here in America, they've got this problem and they need some help. Or the president of South Africa, or any president from Africa, because you got those connections. And that's what's lacking in the political force in America, Black America.
Yeah,
They don't have the capital.
Black women have capital, political capital, but black men don't.
Not really. They, they, their so-called political capital is doing what they're told in order to get what's left.
No, you have political capital in the sense that what they did to Snoop Dogg was monumental, and what they did to Uncle Luke was monumental. They
Yeah,
they publicly silenced the voice of black men politically.
that's because somebody called them up and say, "Hey, look, you can't let this happen."
No, no, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. They were responding to what these guys were saying. What I'm saying here is you won't see Indian women come out and throw
Yes,
Indian men
amen.
to the bus,
Right.
or you won't see Chinese women come out and tell you won't see what's this Republican woman Michelle Malkin come out and tell Andrew Yang to shut up. That doesn't happen.
Nope.
Only in the black community does that happen. And so
Yep.
what I'm saying is that's a level of political capital. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's enough and it's effective to get a message out. And I'm saying black men don't have that. They don't have that at all. And so the only pushback that I have for you is if in what you were saying was that black people don't need to elect anybody. They need to build their own um, political party to put their own people in power. So they need to cultivate their own politicians rather than to look for somebody that's going to do it for them, because a lot of the times they're not really looking out for your best interests at all. And you wouldn't have to come out of your pocket to spend any money if you groom your own politicians to begin with. We just don't do things like that. The Asian community and whatnot, they groom their own politicians. That's why they don't have to pay anybody to do anything. They just actually go out there and groom them.
But they pay the politicians that they groom from the Asian community. They pay if necessary. If he don't have a job, they create a job for him or they pay him.
Mhm.
They pay him that salary that they think he would make
Right.
to be their spokesman. And they build him up as their spokesman, put him in office. And then to replace him, they put another guy in his place and build that same guy up and put him in another office. And when they move him over, they build him another one. That's what we don't do. We don't
Mhm.
have the knowledge to do it. And those, I don't say we don't have the knowledge to do it. Those who have the knowledge to do it are not doing it.
Mhm. No, they're not. You're right about that. And I just think that now is the right time to actually do all of that. Now is the time to do it.
Well,
Because you're in the middle of a coronavirus. Everybody's locked down. There's no movement around. Now's the time to start drawing things up on the whiteboard and getting it done now, so that when it comes time November, when it comes time January, you had enough time to build up. You had enough time to dialogue behind the scenes and actually build up capital, or at least build up a base and start driving the conversation now. This is where black men should be moving. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of black men, just walking around like zombies, and even in the manosphere, like zombies, and not really caring about the outcome of COVID. COVID should be a main talking point for black people, especially black men. You would think that they would be talking more about that and saying, hey, our human rights are not being respected because we're not getting proper access to healthcare, quality healthcare, so that this wouldn't happen to us. That's an easy talking point for them, but they don't really care too much about that. They more or less care about Jordans and things.
well, when you spend your money on Jordan, you can't spend it on food. When you spend your money on Jordan, you can't spend it on healthcare in your community. If I pull up with two trucks full of lumber in a boarded up black community, and I pull up with a couple of vans with Jordans, there'll be a war over the Jordans, and nobody will pay attention to the truck with the wood and the tools to rebuild those houses.
Yeah. Yeah. underskilled, politically disenfranchised. Yeah, that's all. That's all it. You know, it's all there. So
The thinking, Mike, the thinking is, I mean, sad, bro. I some I used to cry about serious. I used to live on the west side around Austin, Madison. Shoot, I used to live in Brooklyn, man, off Atlantic and Fulton. I live in Miami, in oh shoot, Overtown. I seen this stuff, and I can't understand how it exists. I mean, when I say I can't understand how it exists, the how it continues. You know what I'm saying? It, it should get better because there are a lot of people, black people who got cents, and black people who got a few dollars.
mhm.
But when you got a guy who come out of the hood and he becomes a basketball star. I'm not saying that he should be the only one who's doing it, but you got to support. How would I put it? Instead of building a basketball court in the community, or even if you still do, you build something that also will educate. Right next to that basketball court, you gotta have a computer classes, or something that will help kids with homework. Kids come home from school, instead of going on the street becoming gangsters, they go in there and study. You know, Um I, I can't understand how I sat beside. I used to fly all the time, and many times I've met music moguls that control the black music. And when I talk to them, it's like, man, I have to keep my mouth shut. The things that I hear, you know what I'm saying? I can't go out in the communities, tell these guys, what I hear from these people. And I used to cry, and then one day I said, you know what? I'm not going to go through this anymore. These people got enough sense that they should change. I can't change them.
The thing is, we have to. What are our priorities? What are our
Exactly.
priorities? We have to put that on the table and say, this is our 10-point agenda, 20-point agenda, and these are the initiatives that need to be met based on the data.
Yep, exactly. But when you sit down and you tell people, this is the problem that we have in the black community. Instead of sitting down with you and trying to come up with solutions, they say you're too educated, or you're trying to pull us down, or
Mhm.
you're giving us this bad news. The news is bad. You got to hear the bad news. You got to know what's wrong before you can fix it. If you don't think there's nothing wrong, how you gonna fix them?
Because it's doom and gloom. That's what they say. It's doom and gloom. Why do
Right.
we need to, all this information it seems so dreary, and I don't believe it. Okay, we talked about COVID in December of 2019, and here we are today, and the majority of the people being impacted by COVID is Black people.
Yep.
We talked about that in December 2019. Go check the archive for people who are listening.
I was there.
Yeah, we talked
I
about
was
that.
there. Doc Phoenix. I mean, he laid it out.
We should. That's the whole purpose of having something like an African American Union. You have delegates inside the union that can look at all of this type of stuff. You don't have to rely on your own public health sector in such and such city. No, you gather all that data within your organization, and then you disseminate it out, and you do all the analysis, and you put all the things on the table, all the information on the table, and present it in a way that is digestible uh, um, for people to read and understand. That's your job as data scientists and epidemiologists and things of that nature. And so in a political party, that would be a political affairs committee. That would be the purpose of it, is to make sure that the right information is getting out there and that we're not actually filibustering on things that are not that are trivial. You know,
And
getting with women and what kind of game you need, and it's bullshit.
you know, something that's funny that I've been looking for to see it happen, and it hasn't happened.
Mhm.
By the time I was coming on the Black Brain Trust, none of the so-called black elite ever come call and say, you know, hey, we heard you. Um, let's sit down and talk about what we can do.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Um, churches, nobody. You know, politicians, nobody. They all listen. Either they are listening or somebody is listening to them and passing on the information. Somebody up above them, you know, who gathers this information, they would call them and say, hey, you know what's going on down there in your community? You know, this is going on. They're talking about this. They know.
Mhm. Yeah, the future of the community is technocratic. There is no other way to go about this. The liberal agenda has failed. It's on fire right now. It's not working. Um, and black conservatives are kind of putting their head in the sand for all intents and purposes. They're not really as vocal as they make themselves out to see. I mean, I don't take ABL very seriously. Um, he is nobody to be sought after in terms of black political views that reflect the collective. Um, you go talk to Chinese people. See, this is the main thing. My main gripe is that no one ever seems to have a problem with Chinatown existing. Chinatown in every major city, and no one seems to have a problem with it. They put their language out there. They have their own banking institution. They have, you know, um, they hire their own people. No one ever questions it. As soon as black people start having that conversation, it has to be all. It has to include this group and that group. And well, wait a second here. The very people who are interwoven in the fabric of development of this society is being told no. This black men have an agency in looking out for their own best interest first and the best interest of the community first. Those are bad people. How did we even get to this point?
Look, you got to look at how much money is being made where and off what. If the
Mhm.
money is being made off uh, black people being, you know, the dregs of the manosphere and drugs, have the community drugged out and killing one another in little gangs, you know, if that's the money being made, if the money is being made from, you know, women going over to um, Chinatown getting their hair done, nails done, and everything else, if money is being made by women going to church, you know, on Sunday, that's where that's what's going to happen. This is what we're going to have.
Mhm.
You know, people are making money and they can come out and brag and say, "Hey, look, I made this much money off of so and so and so." You
Mhm.
know, and they drive in a Cadillac or well, not even Cadillac now, Lamborghinis, Bentleys. You know, they putting their houses out and say, you know, they got a thing on Facebook or showing what your house look like. You know, they're doing real life TV shows about what your house look like, and how many cars you got. You know.
Mhm.
But the guy who was just graduated school and working his butt off as a doctor, a lawyer, or, you know, he can't say anything, you know. But these guys who are showing off their stuff, you know.
Mhm. No, now is the time because you're talking fourth industrialization, a black version of Chinatown or a Black Town for that matter. Shout out to Mayor of Blacktown on YouTube because he's been talking about this since the 80s. Today would be a Silicon Valley within every major city, or at least every major Black neighborhood would have a Silicon Valley. Most Chinatowns are anywhere between 5 to 10 blocks, not really that big. And so you look at the environment and you shape it in a way that has Pan-Africanness and pro-Black ideology pushed and presented in a way that is in your face. You have Swahili writings everywhere and so on and so forth. That has to be the focal point of image, and so that people actually, because the environment, it will shape people. I mean, you and I know this, but people listen to this, they don't understand that the environment will shape people. If you have a Black town that is built off of Silicon Valley ideals and Pan-Africanist ideals, and you trying to construct this sort of environment so that it's economically viable, that can be done. But there's no sort of willpower, I guess, to speak. There's no political will to go out there and speak to something like this. And we're trying something like that here locally, but that's a long process. It's been going for a few years now. But when people always say Atlanta is, it's the Black Mecca, and it's just, when I was down in Atlanta, that place was pretty jacked up. Okay, and I'm talking about culture is just really jacked up down there. I wouldn't be relying on Atlanta, me personally. All the Black leadership down there, and yet people are still homeless. Black men have high homeless rates in Atlanta. How can that be?
It's money to be made off the homelessness of Black people.
Black men living on streets and living in tents.
Like I said, there's homeless money to be made off of it. Now there's money to be made off of it, and somebody's going to be there. And most of the time is those Black leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they always seem to be part of the left too. Always a part of the left. Istiwa in the chat asked a question: why isn't Baltimore, DC, Houston Black hubs? That's a good question. I don't know much about the Baltimore, DC area or Houston like that. But I think the problem is how you go about constructing an environment, right? Is it pro-Black American? Is it Pan-Africanist? What is it? Right? I mean, having a whole bunch of Black people live around each other that don't even like each other doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
The hub can't be created by
Yeah.
the poor.
Yeah.
Hubs cannot be created by the poor.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have, say for instance, Baltimore. All these towns that you mentioned here got pro basketball players, political players, wealthy people, but they don't turn around and say, you know what, let's bring in a supermarket into the town, let's get the street repaved, let's get good power in the community, let's clean up the community. I saw last year, was it last year or the beginning of this year, there's some Caucasian people moved into Baltimore, start cleaning up, and they got some flat. I mean, you won't believe it.
What does cleaning up mean?
Yes, just cleaning up the street, picking up the garbage. And they got flack for doing that. But the people who were complaining, you see a woman outside beside the street with her hands folded, and she was talking to the news about why these people here. She didn't pick up the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Just complain. So poor people cannot create the hub. You got to have the wealthy people who are going to come in and do the leadership role. And they're going to demand, your congressman, hey, you got to go down and talk to your people. Go to this town hall meeting and say, look, We want you. We're gonna do this for your community if you do this. And the congressman got to go down there and talk to all his local people, whether he's board of education or churches or whatever, and get those people in line. But
The-
that's not happening.
yeah, see that, you know, because somebody just mentioned this in the chat, because you're mentioning the wealthy. I don't think it's the wealthy that needs to do it. I think what you need is federal dollars being pumped into the environment, and you need a committee that's going to oversee that the usage of those funds are properly allocated for their agenda, because that's how Chinatown is developed. You know, Chinatown doesn't maintain itself through Mr. Chow's chicken and everything else. No, that's very small in comparison to the infrastructure that goes into it. Um, they're not able to push their language and their arts and things like that in your face with just a little bit of pork fried rice. That's not the case. That's federal dollars coming in to help keep that stuff maintained, and or state dollars helping to keep that stuff maintained. The, the problem with these ideas about a black town in that regard is that the people that's going to be there, and then you mentioned it earlier about poor people can't do it. The They don't own anything, right? They don't own their house, and so they don't even own property, and so therefore they're not paying into anything. It's being subsidized.
Yeah, but the wealthy. Well, I said the wealthy got a role to play. They have a role to play as part of the leadership.
Mhm.
They're not the only. They're not at the top and telling every. Oh shoot! They're not at the top and telling everybody what to do.
Mhm.
You know, oh, they're not at the top and telling everybody what to do. What they're
Mhm.
doing is like, if suppose you're a black billionaire, you can call a congressman, you
Mhm.
can call a preacher, you
Mhm.
can call somebody on the school board, you can even call the local garbage people and say, hey, look, I just drove through this community. It's really bad. What can you guys do to help the situation? You know what I'm saying? So it's not a matter of me going down there and telling everybody what to do. It's me getting other people together and listen and sit down in a room and say, look, I'm hearing about all these problems, and you know, I know you guys are leaders in the community, so I want to hear your suggestions and how you can do this.
Mhm. Yeah, but that becomes a part of that 10-point, 20-point agenda that an African American Union would establish. It needs to establish. It needs to look at the whole entire country, look at all the states and cities where Black people are predominantly at, get an idea of all of the demographics and the data that goes along with those demographics, and then start setting up initiatives one by one that correlate to those areas. That's how I would do it. I would leverage all the tools possible. We have all the the websites and stuff like that, the CDC and whatnot, and put pressure on them. Put pressure on the local state governments to actually do something. If you're not going to do anything, get out of office.
That's what it needs to be, and it's going to take a lot of people to. I mean, to me, it's going to take something like The Godfather. The
Mhm.
the not the one, not the traditional Godfather in the community, but the one you see on the movie.
Mhm.
You know, there's a big difference. The people who know there's a difference. It's not that some of that don't go on, but there's the person in the community who you gotta go to when you see people throwing trash on the street, and you go with the Godfather and say, "Look, man, you got these people down here that live beside me that keep throwing trash on the street," and somebody goes out and talks to them and say, "Look, this is our community. You can't do that." You see children outside 11, 12 o'clock at night, and somebody can come down and talk to the parents and say, "Look, your children got to go to school tomorrow morning. Who call the children and say, who's your father?" Go down and talk to the kids. You know, you got to go to school tomorrow morning. Why are you out so late? You know, those little things and then the bigger you deal with the bigger issue with the whole community. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep. Definitely.
Because that's what when I grew up, where I was growing up, you know, that's the way it was. Me, sometimes I do something like me and my friend would be we stop beside the river, you know. St. Joseph, we stop in the river, and by the time I get home, my father knew, or my mother knew. Instead of coming straight home, you went the wrong way, you know, so you can go down by the river. How did you know that? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any more. You don't have any more of that in America.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's going to happen. And this thing is you got to work it on all levels, not just a higher up. As when the higher up see that the people who they represent don't care. The only time they're gonna come to you or want to talk to you is time for election.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens.
All right, I think we'll close it out here. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you've not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. There's a doc in the description beneath the video for you to reference, including the intelligence transcripts that people have questioned before. Thank you to DE Raptor for coming through as well. Shalom.